Welcome back to another episode of Biblical Mysteries Unveiled. Today we delve into the heartbreak and tragedy that plagued the family of David, the beloved king. Join us as we uncover the dark secrets hidden within the story of 2 Samuel 13. Our story takes us back in time to the glorious kingdom of Israel, where King David reigned over God's chosen people. But even in the household of such a great king, secrets and tragedy were brewing. The tragic tale begins with a young man named Amnon, the eldest son of King David. Amnon was consumed by an intense desire for his half-sister Tamar, who was known for her remarkable beauty. However, Amnon's burning passion was not accompanied by love or respect. Unable to control his emotions, Amnon created a plan to get close to Tamar. Pretending to be ill, he requested her presence, and against her better judgment, Tamar went to tend to him.
Amnon, what troubles you?
Dear sister, I long for your company. Could you please prepare some food for me?
Amnon, you should be resting. Let me call a servant to assist you.
No, sister, I yearn for your presence. Please, just this once.
Tamar reluctantly prepares food before Amnon. In a moment of vulnerability, Amnon seized the opportunity and forcefully violated Tamar. The pain and shame that followed this atrocious act would forever scar the hearts of both Tamar and Amnon. Tamar's cries for help.
No, Amnon, please let me go. Someone help me.
King David was informed of the incident, and although he was furious, he failed to take immediate action against his son. This lack of swift justice led to further heartaches for David's family. Tamar, filled with anguish and despair, will forever live in loneliness and destitution in her brother Absalom's house. Meanwhile, Absalom, consumed by anger and seeking vengeance for his sister, bided his time, patiently plotting his revenge against Amnon. Special thanks shout-out to Crescendo Cum Fefe, Technical Study Trick 1603. Outline I Amnon rapes Tamar, 1-22, 2. Absalom murders Amnon, 23-36, 3. Absalom flees, 37-39. "13. And it came to pass after this, that Absalom the son of David had a fair sister, whose name was Tamar, and Amnon the son of David loved her. And Amnon was so vexed that he fell sick for his sister Tamar, for she was a virgin, and Amnon thought it hard for him to do anything to her. But Amnon had a friend whose name was Jonadab, the son of Shimea David's brother, and Jonadab was a very subtle man. And he said unto him, Why art thou, being the king's son, lean from day to day? Wilt thou not tell me? And Amnon said unto him, I love Tamar, my brother Absalom's sister. 5. And Jonadab said unto him, Lay thee down on thy bed, and make thyself sick. And when thy father cometh to see thee, say unto him, I pray thee, let my sister Tamar come, and give me meat, and dress the meat in my sight, that I may see it, and eat it at her hand. So Amnon lay down and made himself sick. And when the king was come to see him, Amnon said unto the king, I pray thee, let Tamar my sister come, and make me a couple of cakes in my sight, that I may eat at her hand. Then David sent home to Tamar, saying, Go now to thy brother Amnon's house, and dress him meat. So Tamar went to her brother Amnon's house, and he was laid down. And she took flour, and kneaded it, and made cakes in his sight, and did bake the cakes. 9. And she took a pan, and poured them out before him, but he refused to eat. And Amnon said, Have out all men from me. And they went out every man from him. 10. And Amnon said unto Tamar, Bring the meat into the chamber, that I may eat of thine hand. And Tamar took the cakes which she had made, and brought them into the chamber to Amnon her brother. 1. And when she had brought them unto him to eat, he took hold of her, and said unto her, Come lie with me, my sister. 12. And she answered him, Nay, my brother, do not force me, for no such thing ought to be done in Israel. Do not thou this folly. 13. And I, whither shall I cause my shame to go? And as for thee, thou shalt be as one of the fools in Israel. Now therefore I pray thee, speak unto the king, for he will not withhold me from thee. 14. Howbeit he would not hearken unto her voice, but being stronger than she, forced her and lay with her. 15. Then Amnon hated her exceedingly, so that the hatred wherewith he hated her was greater than the love wherewith he had loved her. And Amnon said unto her, Arise, be gone. 16. And she said unto him, There is no cause. This evil in sending me away is greater than the other that thou didst unto me. But he would not hearken unto her. 17. Then he called his servant that ministered unto him, and said, Put now this woman out from me, and bolt the door after her. 18. And she had a garment of divers colors upon her, for with such robes were the king's daughters that were virgins apparelled. Then his servant brought her out, and bolted the door after her. 19. And Tamar put ashes on her head, and rent her garment of divers colors that was on her, and laid her hand on her head, and went on crying. 20. And Absalom her brother said unto her, Hath Amnon thy brother been with thee? But hold now thy peace, my sister, he is thy brother. Regard not this thing. So Tamar remained desolate in her brother Absalom's house. 21. But when King David heard of all these things, he was very wroth. 21:2. And Absalom spake unto his brother Amnon neither good nor bad, for Absalom hated Amnon, because he had forced his sister Tamar. 1. Who was Absalom's mother? 2. What was the relationship between Amnon and Tamar? 3. What are the relevant biblical commands, principles on this situation? What can you learn about Amnon in verses 1, 2, 5? What was he planning to do about his desire? What changed his mind? What kind of person was Jonadab? What principle can we learn from this about friendship? 7. How do you think David should have responded to Amnon's request? Should David have guessed there was ill intent behind the request? 8. Trace the step-by-step progression of Amnon's sin and the poor judgment of others which let this tragedy happen? How could others have prevented this from happening? So, what do you think about Tamar and her response to Amnon? Was she partially guilty? Why or why not? 10. What do we learn from Amnon's reaction in verse 15? What does this teach us about his love for her? What is the difference between lust and genuine love? 11. How did Absalom react? How about David? Why do you think David didn't punish Amnon? What was the lawful punishment for this crime? Exodus 23. The sins of the father affect the children to the third or fourth generation. Leviticus 18:9. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your sister. Deuteronomy 27:22. Cursed be anyone who lies with his sister, whether the daughter of his father or the daughter of his mother. And all the people shall say, Amen. Exodus 22:16-17. If a man seduces a virgin who is not betrothed and lies with her, he shall give the bride price for her and make her his wife. If her father utterly refuses to give her to him, he shall pay money equal to the bride price for virgins. Deuteronomy 22:25-29, the OT law on rape. Colossians 3:5. Put to death therefore what is earthly in you: sexual immorality, impurity, passion, evil desire, and covetousness, which is idolatry. Galatians 5:16. But I say, walk by the Spirit, and you will not gratify the desires of the flesh. Matthew 5:28. But I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lustful intent has already committed adultery with her in his heart. John 2:16. For all that is in the world, the desires of the flesh, and the desires of the eyes and pride in possessions, is not from the Father, but is from the world. Romans 8:6. For to set the mind on the flesh is death, but to set the mind on the Spirit is life and peace. Peter 2:11. Beloved, I urge you as sojourners and exiles to abstain from the passions of the flesh, which wage war against your soul. Galatians 6:8. For the one who sows to his own flesh will from the flesh reap corruption, but the one who sows to the Spirit will from the Spirit reap eternal life. Samuel 15:4. Oh, that there was a just judge in the land, on love. 1 Corinthians 13. Amnon was David's oldest child. Absalom was second. They were born of different mothers. As such, they would have grown up in different households. At that time, the sons of different queens would have generally seen each other as competitors for their father's attention and competitors for the throne. We see this jealousy and competition among Jacob's sons since he had 4 wives. With David it would have been worse, and these chapters show it was, since he had more wives and since he was a king. Much of the problems in the next few chapters are partially due to David's disregard for the command in Deuteronomy 17:17 for kings not to multiply wives for themselves. Deuteronomy 17:17, "And he shall not acquire many wives for himself, lest his heart turn away, nor shall he acquire for himself excessive silver and gold." While Absalom was partially motivated to avenge the violation of his sister, it is likely that a scheming person like him would have also wanted to use this situation to his advantage and make an attempt for the throne. Tusas fell in love. In this chapter we will see the pitfalls of the worldly view of love. Amnon would surely have been convinced in his own mind that he loved Tamar. His love felt so real. He had never felt anything so deep and so strongly before. He loved her so much that he felt physically ill since he knew he couldn't have her. Amnon did not understand true love, and neither do most people in the world today. 3. Jonadab's suggestion: you can learn a lot about Amnon based on the people he hangs out with. Jonadab is a fool. He is a wicked counselor. He doesn't value morals, right and wrong, but he is a clever schemer. He is worldly wise in the aspect that he can see a situation and try to find out a way, even a sinful way, to get what Amnon wants. It never hurts to have guanxi with a prince who is in line to be king, right? So Jonadab tries to come up with a plan to satisfy Amnon. Amnon and Jonadab would have known the OT laws which were relevant to this situation. Read cross-references. Amnon was forbidden to sleep with Tamar, or marry Tamar because she was his half-sister. If he asked David for her hand in marriage, he would surely be denied. The OT law about forced sex is that the man must marry the woman, provided her father agrees. At first glance, this would seem like a punishment for the woman. After all, what woman would want to get married to that kind of a man? On the other hand, at that time, a woman who was not a virgin would almost certainly not find a husband. Without a husband, a woman would have a very difficult life. A husband provided support, protection, a home, and the opportunity for children. A woman without a husband would become desolate and poor like Ruth before she married Boaz. So in the Old Testament, God was actually a big protector of women. Soldiers at that time in history would just take what and who they wanted. But God said that a soldier must marry the woman, after giving her a month to mourn, if he wanted her. A man was not permitted to just take a woman he wanted. If he wanted a woman, he must marry her. There were no other choices. Jonadab knew all of this. It seems his plan was to force David into a corner. If Amnon already had violated Tamar, there would then be 2 different laws which could be applied, one about rape and one about incest. David would be forced to choose between executing Amnon or allowing the marriage. Jonadab and Amnon were betting that David would choose the latter. Tamar herself seemed to indicate that David would. It was a safe bet considering the sins David had recently done. It is likely he would have been in a merciful mood. Source 4. The scheme. Amnon carried out the scheme as Jonadab planned. Originally, Amnon was unwilling to do anything to his sister since she was a virgin and evidently acted like one. It seems she is chaste. But evil desires that are not dealt with tend to grow and grow. The more Amnon dwelt on this sinful desire, the less self-control he had, and the more opportunities to justify in his own mind what he was going to do. Amnon asks everyone to go out. This gave him an opportunity to commit the sin, and also meant that no one would hear Tamar if she screamed. This, in turn, meant that the rape law of taking place in the countryside would be applied, meaning he could marry her for a price. We should take note that sin loves the dark. For a young woman, there is safety in numbers. A young couple, too, will be safer from temptation if they surround themselves with godly friends. Being alone with a member of the opposite sex brings more temptation and more opportunity to sin. Like with David's sin against Bathsheba, there isn't one person here in this story who stands up to Amnon. No one asks, "Why do you need to be alone with her?" David does not ask, "Why do you want Tamar instead of someone else?" Why? Someone might have felt a little weird about the whole series of events, but perhaps they thought, surely the king's son wouldn't do anything to her. Or perhaps they didn't think at all. Both proved to be very costly mistakes. Application: We should think things through carefully and do our best to both avoid temptation and make sure others around us do as well. Do not be afraid to stand up and speak out if something feels out of place or inappropriate. 5. Tamar tries pleading with Amnon as a brother, but it doesn't work. She mentions that David would be willing to give her to Amnon. It is not sure he would, but at this point she was desperate and just wanted to get out of there. Tamar rightly recognized that this was a disgraceful thing and Amnon was a fool for doing it. Amnon hated her. He didn't love her at all. He did lust for her. Now he felt guilty and self-loathing. In his guilt, he now hated Tamar. He couldn't bear to be with her or to be near her, for she reminded him of the horrible thing he had just done. Contrast the difference between lust and love. See cross-references. A person who falls in love can fall out of love too. We should instead choose to love according to the principles in God's Word and do it unconditionally. 7. Tamar immediately began her mourning. 8. Discuss how David's sin with Bathsheba may have influenced this situation. David had lost moral authority to be a leader in his own family. He had given a sinful model to his children. Beyond that, his own guilt may have made him less strict toward sin than he should have been. We see in verse 21 that David was furious, but neither do we see him doing anything about it at all. He had done something even worse, so he may have asked, "Who am I to punish Amnon? I am a hypocrite if I carry out judgment on him." The sins of the father absolutely affect the children, sometimes for generations. Give out another special thanks shout-out to Eleni Boothie, Ellen 542, SQ Samedli, ESQSMDLI 5EOT76. 2 years later, Absalom's plan was put into motion. He invited all his brothers, including Amnon, to a feast, and when the night grew late, Absalom gave the order.
Brothers, let us drink and enjoy this night together.
The feast continues. With Amnon unaware of his brother's intentions, the dreadful moment arrived when Absalom's servants attacked and killed Amnon in cold blood. The aftermath. The tragedy of David's family did not end there. Absalom, consumed by guilt and fear of his father's wrath, had to flee the kingdom. David, heartbroken over the loss of both his sons, mourned deeply for Amnon but longed for Absalom's return. The dark secrets that plagued David's family resulted in the loss of 2 sons, a tainted bloodline, and a kingdom in turmoil. It serves as a reminder that even the most revered of households bear secrets that can tear them apart. 23. And it came to pass after 2 full years that Absalom had sheep's hearers in Baal-Hazor, which is beside Ephraim. And Absalom invited all the king's sons. 24. And Absalom came to the king and said, Behold now, thy servant hath sheep's hearers. Let the king, I beseech thee, and his servants go with thy servant. And the king said to Absalom, Nay, my son, let us not all now go, lest we be chargeable unto thee. And he pressed him. Howbeit he would not go, but blessed him. 26. Then said Absalom, If not, I pray thee, let my brother Amnon go with us. And the king said unto him, Why should he go with thee? 27. But Absalom pressed him, that he let Amnon and all the king's sons go with him. 28. Now Absalom had commanded his servants, saying, Mark ye now when Amnon's heart is merry with wine, and when I say unto you, Smite Amnon, then kill him, fear not. Have not I commanded you? Be courageous, and be valiant. 29. And the servants of Absalom did unto Amnon as Absalom had commanded. Then all the king's sons arose, and every man gat him up upon his mule, and fled. 30. And it came to pass, while they were in the way, that tidings came to David, saying, Absalom hath slain all the king's sons, and there is not one of them left. 31. Then the king arose, and tare his garments, and lay on the earth, and all his servants stood by with their clothes rent. 32. And Jonadab, the son of Shemaiah David's brother, answered and said, Let not my lord suppose that they have slain all the young men the king's sons, for Amnon only is dead, for by the appointment of Absalom this hath been determined from the day that he forced his sister Tamar. Now therefore let not my lord the king take the thing to his heart, to think that all the king's sons are dead, for Amnon only is dead. But Absalom fled, and the young man that kept the watch lifted up his eyes, and looked, and behold, there came much people by the way of the hillside behind him. 35. And Jonadab said unto the king, Behold, the king's sons come, as thy servant said, so it is. 36. And it came to pass, as soon as he had made an end of speaking, that, behold, the king's sons came and lifted up their voice and wept. And the king also and all his servants wept very sore. One. How long had Absalom been planning, waiting for a chance to get revenge on Amnon? Why did Absalom invite all the king's sons? What was his scheme? Why did his servants comply? Did they have a choice? 3. Why didn't Jonadab do anything if he knew that Absalom was holding this grudge against Amnon? Why does he speak up now? Schwant. Absalom plans and schemes for 2 years. He is a schemer at heart. There is no forgiveness. There is no attempt at reconciliation. There is no attempt to convince Amnon to marry Tamar. He hates Amnon with a fury. Amnon must pay. In his mind, perhaps he considered it all the better that if he killed Amnon, then he would be the eldest son, and in line for the throne. Absalom invited everyone because he knew it would look suspicious if he invited only Amnon. 2. Absalom commands his servants to kill Amnon, and they do. Once again, we see servants who never stop to think or ask why they are obeying a wicked command. 3. Jonadab. For whatever reason, Jonadab was still around David. Although he largely started this mess, he of course doesn't take any blame or responsibility. Instead, he uses the situation to try to gain more influence with the king and improve his favor with the royal family even more. He knew that Absalom was carrying a grudge, but had done nothing to stop it. This shows that he never really cared about Amnon at all. If he had cared for Amnon as a real friend, he would have warned him. He didn't. He viewed Amnon as a tool to gain something for himself. What does this show us about friendship? We need to be careful to make the right friends. We should surround ourselves with friends who care for us, not people who want to use us. That means we must be willing to listen to them when they tell us things which we don't want to hear. 7. But Absalom fled and went to Talmai, the son of Ammihud, king of Geshur, and David mourned for his son every day. 38. So Absalom fled and went to Geshur, and was there 3 years. 39. And the soul of King David longed to go forth unto Absalom, for he was comforted concerning Amnon, seeing he was dead. One. Who is David mourning about in verse 37? What do you think he was mourning about specifically? 2. Why did the king not go to Absalom since he wanted to? And so we close the chapter on the heartbreak and tragedy that unfolded within the family of David, the chosen king of Israel. Join us next time as we unlock more mysteries from the depths of biblical tales. Until then, may peace and understanding prevail. Goodbye, and God bless.